A very good evening to all of you. I hope I'm visible as well as audible. Can you guys give me a quick confirmation in the chat box so that we can start with today's session? And I just want to ask a very general question here. How did you find the AIOM English section? Like, did you like it? Was it manageable or was it moderate to difficult and I would say too challenging? So please let me know in the chat box how did you feel about it. So yeah, this is me, Sukanya, and I hope by after today's class, all your doubts related to AIOM will be crystal clear. And hi, Ruchi. Hi, Prathamesh. Good evening, Raj. I'm not really sure, Raj, which vocab class you're talking about. So can you just throw some more light on it so that I can talk at length about the topic? And yes, अभी तक मुझे किसी ने आंसर्स नहीं दिए हैं वैसे in the chat box. So how did you like your AIOM English section? I'm waiting for your response. And meanwhile, I'll just move to the part where we are supposed to start our analysis with. And as you can see, I've already highlighted certain bits and pieces here. The reason for highlighting these pieces of information was pretty simple because I have a way of color coding my questions and answers. So अगर for example question one जो है वो मैंने color code किया है red में, तो question one का answer भी मैंने red में ही color code किया है. So अगर किसी को कुछ problem है तो please let me know in the beginning so that I can re-explain this. ठीक है? So this time it was manageable. I'm so glad to know that, by the way. I think the first passage was somewhat very, I would say, familiar, and you might have easily understood it because it was about environment. And I think जब से हमने होश संभाला है तो हम environment के बारे में तो पढ़ते हुए आ रहे हैं. तो यहाँ पे कोई मुझे बता सकता है कि first of all there were two acronyms that were used. First was SDGs and second one was OECD. So does anybody know the full form of that? Please put it in the chat box. And yes, let's start with the analysis. I hope you can see my screen very clearly. So हमारे पास चार passages थे. I would say the entire paper was moderate, not very difficult and not too easy. So coming back to the dozens of green deal. ठीक है, ग्रीन डील एजेंडास का मतलब यही होता है कि ऑब्वियसली दीज डील्स आर डन सो दैट वी कैन डू समथिंग about the betterment of our environment. So whenever we talk about these dozens of green deals and the UN SDGs, अभी तक मुझे किसी ने SDGs का full form नहीं बताया, so let me tell you. So that is basically the Sustainable Development Goals. तो हमें देखने को मिलता है that around 2/3 of them relate not to private goods but to global commons. And by global commons, actually we mean the things which we jointly own. For example, that means every citizen of the entire world. So, what are these few things which we jointly own? Obviously, these are the natural resources like forest. Okay, तो यहाँ पे हम बात करते हैं प्राइवेटाइजेशन की, जिसके कारण बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स हो रही हैं. तो we can clearly see here, given that 85% of our global wealth has been privatized already. Now, this is something which comes across as a bad news, right? Secondly, we have a lot of liquidity when it comes to the capital market. So we need to actually carefully look at how we can generate the money we need without privatizing the rest of our planet. If we actually intend to do something fruitful, हमें कोई ना कोई ऐसा रास्ता निकालना पड़ेगा जहां से हम अपनी पूरी दुनिया को प्राइवेटाइजेशन से बचा सके. ठीक है? Now, obviously, the damage has already been done, as we can clearly see. It has already caused a lot of repercussions, like you can see here: species loss, land degradation, climate change, which has obviously created some massive social as well as ecological externalities. कुछ यहाँ पे मैंने highlight किए हुए हैं words and I have also written the meanings of it. So if you want, you can note it down. Externalities का basically मतलब होता है consequences. And obviously consequences are always used in a negative light. ठीक है, so consequences of an industrial or a commercial activity which affects other parties without this being reflected in the market prices. So कहीं ना कहीं उसके जो repercussions हैं, consequences हैं, we are sorely facing that. Okay, and that will increase our future cost. तो अभी तो ठीक है, right now it's manageable, right now we can even overlook it. But आने वाले कुछ सालों में this is actually going to create a big upheaval in all of our lives. तो वही बोल रहा है कि आने वाले समय में फ्यूचर कॉस्ट इसका बहुत महंगा पड़ने वाला है सभी को. Then we also talk about, in other words, we have had our lunch. For example, you go to a 5-star hotel and you have your lunch or dinner, and then you basically try to get away without paying the bill. Are they going to let you go like that? Obviously नहीं. तो हम देख सकते हैं that's exactly what we are trying to do here. There is a lack of responsibility and accountability. तो हम लोग अपनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज उठाना नहीं चाह रहे हैं, हम चाह रहे हैं कि हम उसको इग्नोर करके आगे बढ़ जाएं. तो अगेन दिस इज समथिंग विच इज गोइंग टू कैच अप समडे. तो हम यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं कि ये जो प्रॉब्लम है दिस इज एक्चुअली बीइंग लेफ्ट for the global south. So that means who is actually facing the brunt of it? It's the global south. Even future generations or nature itself has to deal with it. So sustainable development का मतलब ये होता है to ensure that our future generation has all the resources that we had, right? So यहाँ पे कहीं ना कहीं अगर हम आज कुछ protect नहीं करेंगे तो future generation is definitely going to pay for our actions, right? तो यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं now we are starting to experience the negative impact in the form of increased risks. तो प्रॉब्लम्स तो आएंगी ही, तो यहाँ पे रिस्क बढ़ गए हैं. सेकेंडली हम देख सकते हैं कि कैलामिटीज, एडवर्स सिचुएशंस, कैटास्ट्रोफीज आने वाले समय में बहुत ही ज्यादा प्रोमिनेंट हो जाएंगी. सो वी हैव टू एक्चुअली कम अप विद अ स्ट्रेटजी. नाउ इज द टाइम. सो दिस इज अ वेरी अलार्मिंग सिचुएशन फॉर ऑल ऑफ अस कि हमें कुछ ना कुछ स्ट्रेटजी लेके आना पड़ेगा so that we can protect our environment in a sustainable fashion. Also, so that we can minimize the future cost. So एक preventive हमारे पास approach तो सामने आया है, but when you read the entire passage, you get to know that अभी इस चीज में काफी टाइम लगेगा. ठीक है? So coming back to this, funding, hedging and managing the commons. जब बात करते हैं कि to first of all raise the funding, फंडिंग तो हम चलो एक बार रेस कर लें, बट द थिंग इज बाकी जो सारी चीजें होती हैं लाइक हेजिंग की बात हुई है, मैनेजिंग द कॉमन्स. कॉमन्स इज अगेन द नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज. It is a fiendishly difficult problem. Fiendish means find is basically a devil. So it is a devilishly or so wicked that this problem is not easy to resolve. तो हमें समझ में आता है सबसे पहले तो on one hand when it comes to ROI का मतलब होता है return on investment, which is obviously given in one of the questions. अगर तुम लोगों ने ध्यान से पढ़ा होगा तो I think you probably would have got the full form of the acronym. तो हम देखते हैं कि when it comes to raising the ROI, we can actually generate a staggering ROI. इसका मतलब ये है कि ROI की बात होती है रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट की, तो we are I think more than sufficient एक बहुत ही अच्छा फिगर देने के लिए. सो हमारे पास रेशियो आता है 1:15 या उसके हाई. लेकिन फिर पता चलता है on the other hand that our own as you can very well see our own public sector is over indebted. दैट मीन्स हमारे ऊपर इतना ज्यादा कर्जा है कि भले ही हमने रिटर्न ऑन इन्वेस्टमेंट तो अच्छा खासा दिखा दिया, बट दैट मनी इज इवेंचुअली गोइंग टू गो इन एक्चुअली पेइंग ऑफ दोज एक्स्ट्रा डेट्स. तो हम उसे कॉमन्स के लिए यूज ही नहीं कर पाएंगे. ठीक है? सो कमिंग बैक टू दिस, द प्रॉब्लम रिमेन्स द सेम. प्रॉब्लम का सोल्यूशन तो निकला नहीं. ठीक है? तो यहाँ पे एक चीज यही पता चलती है कि द पब्लिक सेक्टर इज ओवर इंडेटेड इन मोस्ट OECD and developing countries. What's the full form of OECD? Does anybody know? किसी को पता है? Please put it in the chat box. By the way, they also talk about Anthropocene era. Now, Anthropocene era का मतलब ये नहीं है कि कोई golden era था या कुछ सालों पहले की बात है या जब civilization हुआ था तब की बात है. No. Anthropocene era का बहुत ही simple सा meaning है. It basically means the time during which humans have had a substantial impact on the planet. Even today, is the Anthropocene era. ठीक है? तो यहाँ पे ज्यादा दिमाग लगाने की बात नहीं है. Whenever the human beings have actually intervened or interfered with the systems and obviously had some consequential impacts, तो इसका मतलब है वो Anthropocene era चल रहा है. And human beings have had the habit of poking their nose in everybody's business. So हमें अच्छे से पता है ये चीज. Moving forward to the next one. Thank you so much, Prathamesh. Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, that's the full form of OECD, which was answered by Prathamesh. Well done. So moving forward, हमें पता चलता है कि because of this problem, because Anthropocene era में क्या है, बहुत ही asymmetry है in patterns. That means we cannot with surety say कि इतना पैसा आने वाला है और इतना पैसा we are going to actually allocate for the commons. And because of asymmetry, because of unpredictability, हम कोई आगे का response जो है वो decide नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. So this makes it harder to mobilize the trillions of private sector liquidity. चलो कहने को तो ये है कि हमारे पास काफी पैसा है. Even liquid money we have. But if we are again and again encountering situations, for example, COVID, कोविड जो था, nobody was prepared for that. Nobody was actually prepared for the kind of money that it actually extracted out of us. So this is also one of the reasons of that unpredictability. हमें नहीं पता है कि कब क्या हो जाए. So I cannot simply put all my eggs in one basket. मैं ये नहीं सोच सकती कि मुझे अपने environment को ही protect करना है तो मैं सारा पैसा वहां लगा दूं, because I don't know what problem might befall me the very next moment. तो यही प्रॉब्लम हो रही है कि भले लिक्विडिटी तो अच्छी खासी है हमारे पास, बट फिर इतनी सारी एसिमेट्रिकल पैटर्न्स, इतनी सारी अनप्रिडिक्टेबिलिटी, अनसर्टेनिटी के कारण आई एम नॉट एबल टू डू एनीथिंग फॉर माय एनवायरनमेंट. नाउ कमिंग बैक टू दिस, ensuring our commons means ensuring economic wealth and prosperity. The first step that I need to ensure is that the entire world is in a, I would say, same situation where everybody is prosperous, everybody is wealthy, everybody can afford paying the money for the betterment of the environment. But right now we cannot really say that. Okay, so no taxation scheme. देखो, गवर्नमेंट के पास एक सिंपल सा रास्ता होता है, टैक्स बढ़ा दो. But the thing is, मैंने अगर taxes बढ़ा भी दिए तो I would be able to increase it only up to a limit. I cannot ask for exorbitant amount of money from my taxpayers because then they will start revolting eventually. तो ये भी नहीं कर सकते, आज तक कोई ऐसी taxation scheme आई नहीं है जो पूरी balance out कर दे जितनी भी money requirement है दुनिया की, right? So no taxation scheme currently exists anywhere in the world that is capable of funding our commons. इतना पैसा तो tax से भी नहीं आएगा, which will be able to, I would say, क्या बोलते हैं, manage the natural resources of the entire world. Also, we can see here the even if we take stress tests, time to time अगर हमने stress test लिए, time to time अगर हमने ESG taxonomies पे हमने पैसा लगाया, standardized accounting की, philanthropy हो सकता है, many people might pay money for charity. इसके बाद भी it looks like, I would say, a distant dream. Because you can see here, these are all linear interventions. Anything which is a linear intervention, इसका मतलब है वो slow and steady ही चलेगी. It does not mean it's going to be a drastic change. Because if you want a drastic change, then you will have to take drastic steps. But ये सारे जो steps हैं वो बहुत ही, आप बोल सकते हो, common से steps हैं जो कि बहुत ही एक लीनियर ऑर्डर में या एक सेम लाइन में चलते हैं. इससे आपका जो फंड क्रिएट होगा वो इतना ज्यादा नहीं होगा that you will be able to manage your environment. So that is exactly what is being said here. Also, अगर हम देखें in the traditional approach, finance still drives our commons. आज हमारे सारे decisions regarding environment are based on our finances, but it should be the other way around actually. That's what the writer has said here in the end. It should be the other way around because the commons should actually drive finance. People should be willing to pay money for their natural resources, not the other way around. Okay? So, अगर यहाँ पे passage में कुछ भी नहीं समझ में आया है, please feel free to ask in the chat box. I'll definitely try to clear it out. Okay? So let's see the very first question here. So as I have already told you, I have color coded it for you guys to be, so that you can find the answers easily. हम यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं, I don't know how many of you have the habit of marking the keywords, but अगर तुम लोगों को आदत होगी जैसे कि मैं करती हूँ, तो इससे काफी easy हो जाता है to actually go back to the passage and find our answers. So here the thing that I have underlined is, first of all, what does the author propose should be the relationship between finance and the commons. अब finance and commons की relationship बस एक paragraph में discuss होती है. Can anybody quickly tell me? We just discussed it. What was the paragraph? Was it the first one or was it the last one? And also it talks about the contrast with the current situation. So the traditional case and the current situation जो की बात हो रही थी. So we did discuss it in the very last paragraph. अगर तुम लोगों ने ध्यान दिया हो, अब भी just हम जो बात कर रहे थे वो यही बात कर रहे थे, between the commons and the finances. What is the relationship? Traditional approach से देखो तो आज भी finances are basically running the commons. On the other hand, the writer wants it should be the other way around. The commons should actually drive the finances. So the last paragraph, the last line is basically your question number 1. And exactly, Prathamesh. Absolutely right. तो यहाँ पे ज्यादा दिमाग लगाना नहीं था. It was actually a part of your direct question. इसके अलावा इफ आई रीड ए सी एंड डी, हमें अच्छे से पता चल जाता है कि जहाँ पे फाइनेंस एंड कॉमन्स की बात हो रही थी वहां पे ये तीनों भी बातें नहीं हो रही थी, तो इट वाज वेरी इजी टू एलिमिनेट. ओके, so only the last paragraph talks about it. Moving forward to the next one. What's the primary concern expressed in the passage regarding the current state of global wealth and its impact? So the writer talks about it in the very first paragraph. वो क्या बोलता है? That the global wealth has been distributed in an inequitable order. That means 80% has been privatized. तो वो यही बात करता है. Although we do have ample of liquidity, but still there is a disproportionate distribution. So that brings me to the first one. Global wealth is disproportionately privatized, risking further environmental damage. Let me take you to the part where this is given. Can you check it here? This is basically your answer too. तो उसने क्या बोला है, किस तरीके से ग्लोबल वेल्थ डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड है? 85% ऑफ इट हैज ऑलरेडी बीन प्राइवेटाइज्ड. We do have a lot of liquidity, but the thing is, we need to look carefully at how we can generate the money so that, we stop ourselves from privatizing the rest of the planet. Okay, so here, this is the answer. By the way, I'll also take you to the other options. अगर किसी ने कुछ और mark किया हो, let me know in the chat box. So if I talk about option B, the concentration of wealth has led to significant species loss and climate change. He definitely did talk about significant species loss and climate change, but the thing is, the concentration of wealth wasn't really been talked about in the context of significant species loss and climate change. और दूसरी बात, concentration of wealth, लेकिन किसके पास है ये wealth? So it is a very vague option. How can you choose that as your answer? ठीक है, तो अगर वो clearly बोल देता कि किसी के हाथ में है, ये concentrated है, तो हम बता सकते थे. बट यहाँ पे अगेन देयर इज अ सेंस ऑफ एम्बिग्यूटी अटैच्ड टू इट, सो इट्स अ वेग ऑप्शन. सेकेंडली, सिग्निफिकेंट स्पीशीज लॉस एंड क्लाइमेट चेंज जो है वो प्राइमरी कंसर्न तो नहीं है. ठीक है, द प्राइमरी कंसर्न वाज समथिंग एल्स व्हिच वाज ऑब्वियसली ऑप्शन ए. ठीक है, सो मूविंग फॉरवर्ड, इफ आई टॉक अबाउट C1, सी इसलिए आंसर नहीं हो सकता है क्योंकि यहाँ पे क्लियरली लिखा है liquidity in capital markets is insufficient, whereas the writer clearly talks about it in the first paragraph that we do have sufficient resources for liquidity. ठीक है, तो पैसेज में तो दिया हुआ है sufficient और यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है insufficient, so this is contradictory here. And the last one cannot be the reason, because although it might be given in the passage, जो कि हम OECD countries के बारे में बात कर रहे थे, how they are under, a lot of debt and everything. But the thing is, again, this is not really the primary concern when it comes to the current state of global wealth and its impact. Okay, it was a sub reason, not the main reason. So there is a difference between that. Okay, and also this has been added later on. तो starting में तो बात इसी की ही होती है, and this is basically a later factor which is added by the writer. So coming back to the next one, how does the passage describe the consequences of previous environmental damages such as species loss and climate change? जो मैंने highlight करके रखा हुआ है, that is basically your keyword. I don't know whether you guys have paid attention. So यहाँ पे मैंने already इस चीज को highlight किया हुआ है, species loss. Yeah, the entire paragraph is actually part of your answer 3. Answer 3 or answer 4? Not really sure. Yeah, answer 3. Okay, so if you can see it here, species loss, land degradation has been mentioned only once. Okay. Secondly, he also talks about how it has caused massive social as well as ecological consequences. And also we'll have to pay some future cost, right? Also, we can see, in other words, we have had our lunch. That means we are kind of shirking from our responsibilities. We are not really trying to pay our bills. So that's another problem. And everything is going to the global south. ये पूरी mess जो है, we have left it for the global south. And that's exactly what has been asked in the question. So let's go back to the question here. देख लो यहाँ पे. Future cost, responsibilities, consequences of previous environmental damages, species loss, climate change. ये सारी चीजें बात होती है सेकंड पैराग्राफ में. These damages have led to higher future cost and shifted the burden to the global south. That's exactly what you found in the second paragraph. Yes or no? Was it that difficult to find? This was again a part of your direct question. Let's talk about option A. Environmental damages have permanently reduced the global capacity. कहीं भी has the impact been mentioned as a permanent thing? क्या उसने ये बोला था कि अब हमेशा के लिए ही चीजें खत्म हो गई? Always remember, if you are not careful about your extreme words, they are actually going to create a lot of problem for you. So यहाँ पे permanently reduce जो है वो एक extreme word है और जिसके बारे में इतना extremely passage में बात ही नहीं हुई है. Past damages have necessitated increased global cooperation for environmental recovery. See, this might be one of the reasons कि past damages हुए थे और इसी के कारण we need to take the steps. But the thing is, the writer talks about the entire passage in present tense. He talks about the current problems. He talks about the recent repercussions that we are facing. तो past damages ये एक आप बोल सकते हो far-fetched inference है. But the thing is, passage में उसका इतना clearly, boldly कोई claim ही नहीं हुआ है. So I cannot really rely on this particular option. The damages have increased the immediate financial burden on developed nations. Again, कहीं भी इतनी immediacy दिखाई ही नहीं गई थी. This is another extreme word I would say. जिसके बारे में वो बोलता है कि एकदम से immediately ही financial burden बढ़ गया था on developed nation. ठीक है, जो कि यहाँ पे बात नहीं होती है. कोई immediate financial burden नहीं. It has been, I would say, a slow and steady process, and it has actually, I would say, created a lot of problems over the course of years. So suddenly कोई problems नहीं आ रही in the passage. Now moving forward to the fourth one. According to the passage, what challenges are associated with funding, hedging and managing global commons? यहाँ पे keyword आपका था Anthropocene era, which has been mentioned only once. तो क्या प्रॉब्लम है एंथ्रोपोजीन एरा की? एंथ्रोपोजीन एरा की एक ही प्रॉब्लम है, एंड दैट इज द अनसर्टेनिटी. That is, I cannot simply trust on it. Why? Because it creates asymmetrical patterns and a lot of unpredictability, which is given right here. I hope you have marked the same as your answer. In addition, the Anthropocene era is marked by uncertainties and asymmetric shocks. इसी की वजह से तो problems आ रही है, right? So this was again a direct question. Also, as you can clearly see, बाकी सारे जो options हैं, if I talk about this one, this was a different context altogether because the writer did talk about OECD right before Anthropocene era. But Anthropocene era and OECD countries are two different topics altogether. So do not try to, put them in the same box. Again, the lack of global cooperation hinders the implementation of effective commons. Now, the thing is, this has not been mentioned explicitly as the main challenge. तो इसको हम कैसे ही सोच सकते हैं? अगेन जो चीज आपको डायरेक्टली दी हुई है तो वहां ज्यादा दिमाग लगाने की जरूरत है नहीं. सो दिस इज अ डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन. Insufficient ROI, I already told you in the first paragraph. The writer very clearly says, not in the first paragraph, I think it was the second last paragraph where ROI is mentioned. तो ROI जहाँ पे mentioned है वहां पे बोला गया है कि we can actually show a staggering ROI. But the problem is, our public sector is overly indebted. That means we have to pay a lot of, I would say, कर्जा हमें चुकाना है. ठीक है, तो वो बात हुई थी. तो insufficient ROI वाला केस ही नहीं है because it contradicts the passage. And the answer is obviously a direct one. So D is the answer. Moving to the fifth one, what does the passage imply about the return on investments? ये भी direct question था, अगर तुम लोगों ने notice किया हो. So if you are somebody who's really good at marking your keywords, I think answers will come easily to you. So यहाँ पे हमारा return on investment की बात सिर्फ एक बार होती है, and that is very clearly given कि ROI तो हम लोग बहुत अच्छा generate कर लेते हैं. It's the problem with the public sectors कि उनका हमें जो आप बोल सकते हो debt है वो चुकाना पड़ जाता है. So this is exactly what is being talked about here. Despite a high ROI from commons management, public sector debt limits its implementation, which is also given in blue here if you haven't found it in the passage. Mila ki nahi mila? This is where it's given. Was it fifth or sixth? I think fifth. Yeah. So I hope you have found your fifth answer as well. Okay, when we talk about the second one, if you read it carefully, you'll automatically understand that it is a contradictory point. देख लो वहां पे क्या लिखा है, commons management offers a low ROI. Low की high? The ROI on commons management is irrelevant. कोई मतलब ही नहीं है ROI का. ऐसा है क्या? When we talk about the environment, we do talk about the ROI as well. और ROI से तो हम लोग actually we can use that money to actually fend for ourselves when it comes to the environment. But it's the problem with the public sector debt, which has been creating a lot of issues for us. So irrelevant तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. And यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है commons management ROI is high, but it is overshadowed by private sector profitability. प्राइवेट सेक्टर की पहली बात तो कहीं बात होती नहीं है, पब्लिक सेक्टर की बात होती है. सेकेंडली, इट इज ओवरशैडोड बाय डेट, नथिंग पॉजिटिव, राइट? सो अगर कुछ पॉजिटिव से ओवरशैडोड होता तो आई थिंक आज हमें उसका रेजोल्यूशन मिल चुका होता, बट वी आर ओवरशैडोड बाय डेट इंस्टेड. एंड द लास्ट क्वेश्चन फॉर दिस वन, why does the author suggest that current taxation schemes, तो लास्ट पैराग्राफ में बात करता है वो कि no taxation scheme can actually do anything about it, because it is going to undergo a linear intervention. When I talk about a linear intervention, इसका मतलब it's a slow, gradual, steady process. हमें कोई magical results उससे नहीं निकलने वाले. This is again another direct answer, right? And for the people who have just joined us, a very good evening to all of you. So we are on the last question of the first passage. I'll show you where it is exactly. So as you can see, कहाँ बात होती है taxation scheme की और linear interventions की. It is too slow, too low in volume to awaken this sleeping giant. Why we cannot do anything about it when it is a linear transaction? Because वो तो अपनी ही speed पे काम करेगा. I already told you that in order to take in order to get drastic results, you need to take drastic measures. But linear transaction does not really allow that. So the answer is very directly option C. Moving on to the next passage. How many of you liked reading this passage? Let's be honest. मुझे तो काफी मजा आया ये passage पढ़ के. I am hoping that you guys have also liked it. बहुत ही interesting सा passage था. And it was about, I would say, the windows, right? Very interestingly, आज तक मेरे ख्याल से किसी ने windows के बारे में इतना detail में बात नहीं की है. So let's talk about how it has become a fashion statement, okay, to keep your windows open. And when we walk down the block of a wealthy neighborhood, so suppose you are walking down the most wealthy neighborhood in your city, what you will be surprised to see, that your uncovered windows, the uncovered windows of these wealthy people, it will show you the glow of a flat screen TV. It will probably show you a curved couch or maybe a chandelier. मतलब everything that is reeking of wealth, opulence and money. तो आपको इतनी सुंदर चीजें देखने को मिलेगी as if you are walking into a showroom. So it has been decorated in such a way that it is very pleasing to the eyes. And as you can very well see here, most of आप देख सकते हो, some of the curtains are closed, but many are flung open. तो ज़्यादातर लोगों के यहाँ curtains जो हैं, they are not really drawn. Most of them are flung open, and the home's interiors are exposed. That means anybody can see the beautiful houses' interiors. It's like you are peering into a showroom, जो कि मैंने तुम लोगों को पहले ही बताया. Peering का मतलब होता है when you look closely or carefully at somebody or something. Okay, so moving forward, हम जब बात करते हैं कि uncovered windows now has become a fixture of high-end homes. So when we talk about high-end homes, nowadays this has been the latest trend that people have started to uncover, keep their windows uncovered. The meaning of uncovered is they use transparent windows and they do not really use drapes or curtains. उनके घर खुले रहते हैं, ठीक है? And also, as you can very well see, the New York Times has actually referred to it as obligatory uncurtained windows. That means the New York Times is doing every possible thing to make it a trend. क्योंकि अगर New York Times ने छापा है तो obviously the elites are obviously going to follow that. So we can clearly see that. When we talk about Brooklyn Heights, which is one of the richest enclaves in New York City, Even the Root pointed out that this seemed common among wealthy young white people living in gentrified urban areas. So the Root probably is another magazine जिसमें यही लिखा हुआ है कि ये आजकल एक बहुत ही कॉमन सिनेरियो हो गया है where wealthy young white people who live in gentrified का मतलब होता है obviously the rich areas where good gentry is found. ठीक है, क्लास आप बोल सकते हो classy sophisticated लोग जहाँ पाए जाते हैं, तो वहां पे it has become a very common phenomena. On TikTok, even onlookers have been very, very baffled. Baffled का मतलब होता है they have been shocked and surprised by this and confused कि अचानक से ये हो क्या रहा है. Also, you might have also like kind of experienced that because of Instagram and TikTok, it has become very easy to actually scroll through people's lives because everything is posted online. तो यहाँ पे वही बात हो रही है, ठीक है. And sometimes tempted to pry. भाई अगर let's be very honest, अगर किसी अमीर किसी wealthy इंसान की लाइफ में हमें झांकने को मिलता है, अगर उनके घर को देखने को मिलता है, तो who wouldn't want to pry? Okay, who wouldn't want to actually peek to try to find out about other people's private affairs? So everybody is interested, and that's exactly what the passage is talking about. So now अब हम बात करते हैं कि although ये जो phenomena है ये ज्यादातर सिटीज में ही आपको देखने को मिलता है, क्योंकि आजकल इसको बहुत क्लियरली आपने लिंक बना दिया है कि इफ यू आर वेल्दी तो आपके यहाँ एक्सपोज्ड विंडोज होंगी. दैट मीन्स वेल्थ इज इक्विवेलेंट टू एक्सपोज्ड विंडोज. आप गरीब हो तो यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू हैव एक्सपोज्ड विंडोज. इट हैज बीन मेड इनटू अ ट्रेंड लाइक दैट. ठीक है, most people do still close their shades. Obviously there are people who kind of, I would say, want their privacy, who might not want to be in the direct sunlight. तो वो आज भी थोड़े से ड्रेप्स या कर्टन्स कहीं ना कहीं ड्रॉ कर ही लेते हैं. बट यहाँ पे बोला गया है कि बट अमेरिकन्स हु अर्न मोर देन $150,000, that means you can see $150,000 is actually a huge amount of money, right? So that means we're talking about the wealthy people. They are almost twice as likely to leave windows uncovered as those making $20,000 to $29,000. गरीब लोग अपनी विंडोज ओपन नहीं रखेंगे, बट अमीर लोग, as you can see, they will keep their windows opened or uncovered. And this has been conducted by the US Department of Energy, a survey conducted by US Department of Energy. उन्हीं लोगों ने ये सब पता लगाया था that nearly 20% of the first group compared with just over 10% of the second. That means ये जो first group है, they are highly likely to keep their windows uncovered, and they come in obviously the higher tax bracket. इनकी salaries ज़्यादा है, इनके पास पैसा ज़्यादा है. Moving forward, हम देखते हैं the line isn't smooth as you slide up and down the income scale. Now, probably the writer is of the opinion that it's not just about the income scale, which kind of draws this line between the rich and the poor. But the overall trend is clear. But ये तो बहुत clear हो गया है कि the magazines, the social media platforms, they have made it very evident that if you belong to a rich, wealthy family, that means you would like your windows to be uncovered. ठीक है, तो हम देख सकते हैं कि the choice to draw or not draw the curtains is in part driven by class. It will actually decide whether you come from a classy, sophisticated family or not. So कहीं ना कहीं आप बहुत बोल सकते हो subconsciously it has kind of made a hole in our imagination और हमें सोचने पे मजबूर कर दिया है. So every common person would also start to think in the same way कि अगर मैं अपने windows uncovered रखूंगा तो maybe people would have the impression that I am rich. Okay, so ditching shades has a lot of upsides regardless of who you are. देखो, obviously when you ditch or when you give up shades or curtains, अगर आपने curtains बिल्कुल हटा दिए तो उसके कुछ ना कुछ downsides तो होंगे. ठीक है, it's not everything is not very rosy here. Let's talk about what it is. तो हम बात करते हैं कि uncovered windows bring in natural light. अब अच्छी बातें तो सबसे पहले ये है कि when you have your windows uncovered, it will actually bring in the natural light. Your house would be more well ventilated. It will have proper light. It will also offer a view of the outer world. So kind of looks like a win-win situation. But the trade-off का मतलब होता है जो bargain है, where one of the party has to compromise. Now this trade-off actually means that it also means that your house is open to the passers-by. अब जो भी आपके घर के सामने से निकल रहा है उनको तो सब समझ में आ रहा है कि अंदर क्या चल रहा है. It's kind of on a display. And in the summer, obviously, it's going to channel a lot of heat because the sun's light is directly going to fall in your house. So summer में तो ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा inconvenient रहेगा. फिर हम बात करते हैं for many, the concerns about privacy and finances outweigh the aesthetic and mental health benefits. बहुत सारे लोग हैं who prioritize their privacy and finances. And they don't really care about aesthetics and mental health benefits which opened windows actually bring with them. तो बहुत सारे लोगों के लिए तो ये है कि मेरी प्राइवेसी मेरे लिए ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, ठीक है. But then again, the trend has been seen in the people with the highest income brackets that this calculus, yani ki this story is a little different here. People with a big home can more easily get natural light and privacy. पहली बात तो ये है कि people who have huge houses, mansions, they don't really have the problem of ensuring their privacy because they have resources. उनके घर में आसपास पहले तो सेफ गार्डेड रहेगा, पूरी की पूरी बाउंड्री रहेगी. They'll probably have like everything gated, everything I would say surrounded by trees probably. ठीक है. तो invasion of privacy is not very common for people who can actually afford it क्योंकि उनके पास resources है. They will also have security guards who will not allow anybody to get into the house. तो ऐसी बहुत सारी चीजें, तो इन लोगों के लिए तो कोई खास प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. These people don't need to worry so much about heating and cooling cost. Heating and cooling का cost इन लोगों के लिए क्यों है, क्यों नहीं है? क्योंकि इनके solar panels होते हैं usually. So they don't really care about the electricity bills. They are going to basically blast their AC and they will not even bat their eyelets. So इन लोगों के लिए ऐसी कुछ as such problem नहीं है. So slowly uncovered windows have become a status symbol. Anything that the rich do will be followed by everybody else. And हम देख ही सकते हैं people with highest income brackets do not really pay much attention to that. ठीक है. Foregoing curtains wasn't always so appealing. Foregoing का मतलब होता है letting go. Letting go the curtains, क्योंकि हम curtains use किया करते थे तो वो इतना आसान नहीं था लेकिन हमारे लिए कि यार क्योंकि obviously curtains kind of protect us from the outer world, right? When transparent glass windows, लेकिन हाँ 18th century यूरोप में एक हमारे पास आर्किटेक्चरल आप बोल सकते हो इनोवेशन आया which was transparent glass windows. अब यहाँ पे क्या होता है कि सबसे पहले तो people had their reservations about it. They sparked fears. People started thinking about prying neighbors. What happens if my neighbors actually see everything that's happening in my household? That is going to be a huge problem. And an overabundance of light. कुछ लोगों को हो सकता है overabundance of light पसंद ना हो. So that those were their primary fears. ठीक है. Which Oscar Wilde also complained about in 1884 that most modern windows are much too large and glaring. ठीक है, उन्होंने भी यही बोला कि ज्यादातर जो मॉडर्न विंडोज है वो बहुत ही बड़ी है. And secondly, glaring as in the sun's light directly falls in your house, which creates a problem. तो ये ऑस्कर वाइल्ड की कंप्लेंट थी. Now, curtains were a natural solution back in the day. यहाँ पे हमने बात की कि कैसे हमने कर्टन्स को हटा दिया अपनी जिंदगी से. तो कर्टन्स उस समय पे एक नेचुरल सोल्यूशन की तरह देखे जाते थे. And as you can very well see, Daniel, a professor at NYU, discusses the history of windows in his book Transparency. तो यहाँ पे as the 19th century German architect Richard, उन्होंने भी बात की है. ये जो कर्टन्स हुआ करते थे, they helped create a sense of seclusion from the exterior world. तुम ही लोग सोचो अगर तुम लोगों ने अपने घर में कर्टन्स कभी ड्रॉ किए होंगे तो you will also feel the same kind of way that it kind of separates you from the outer world. It kind of protects you in your own little bubble, right? Now the thing is houses without curtains. लेकिन अब प्रॉब्लम क्या हो गई क्योंकि ये rich people trend है तो houses without curtains came to be seen as the epitome of poverty. और जिन लोगों को आज भी curtains लगाना पसंद था they were seen as the embodiment of poverty. सबसे गरीब लोग हैं तभी कर्टन्स लगा रहे हैं. ठीक है. As one 1880s German manual put it, obviously this was not really the problem for aristocrats because aristocrats के घर आप लोगों ने देखे ही होंगे. They are huge mansions and they have tons of rooms. तो हम देख सकते हैं कि ऐसा नहीं होता हमारे घरों की तरह कि 3 BHK या 4 BHK या 5 BHK के घर होते हैं उनके. Mansions जो होते हैं उसमें 20, 30, 40, 50 rooms होते हैं. तो अगर मैं चाहूँ कि मुझे अपनी प्राइवेसी को बरकरार रखना है, I can go in one of the rooms and settle myself. Okay, so this was not really a problem for the aristocrats because they lived in houses so large that they could easily retreat to internal rooms. ठीक है. So privacy was never really a concern for them. So this was about the second passage. Moving to the questions. अब यहाँ पे first of all एक चीज मैं बता दूं. So question number 7 as well as question number 12th. 7th and 12th has been taken from the same paragraph and that's the reason I have highlighted it in green as you can very well see. मैंने 7th को और 12th को दोनों को ही green में highlight किया because the answer could be found from the same paragraph. ठीक है? So according to the passage, what historical shift in architectural design? क्योंकि मुझे ये पता है कि most people might have gone with the first option क्योंकि ऑस्कर वाइल्ड की बात होती है बट यू गाइज मस्ट हैव फॉरगॉटन कि यहाँ पे एक हिस्टोरिकल शिफ्ट की भी बात हो रही है इन आर्किटेक्चरल डिजाइन. ठीक है, तो दो चीजों की बात होती है वेयर ऑस्कर वाइल्ड इज कंप्लेनिंग अबाउट हिज फियर ऑफ टू मच एक्सपोजर एंड लाइट एंड ऑल्सो व्हाट इज द हिस्टोरिकल शिफ्ट in the architectural design. So if you see the first one, the transition from smaller to larger window designs in modern architecture. बहुत सारे लोगों ने शायद ये आंसर मार्क किया होगा. How many of you have marked this as your answer? Let's be very honest. Because I think this was the second best answer. But why it cannot be our answer? पहली बात तो ये कि transition from smaller to larger window, this is not an architectural design shift. ठीक है, क्योंकि छोटी विंडोज एंड बड़ी विंडोज पास्ट में भी एग्जिस्ट करती थी. ये कोई ऐसा नहीं था कि एक आर्किटेक्चरल डिजाइन शिफ्ट था जिसकी वजह से द कोर्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड चेंज्ड. इट वाजंट दैट. it was the transparent glass windows which changed the course of history. So coming back to this, हम देख सकते हैं कि first of all, not an architectural design that's discussed. The passage discusses the transparency, not the size as an architectural design shift. उसने कहीं भी ये पहले बात की थी क्या that the size of the windows actually matter? It was only Oscar Wilde who did talk about the size of the window, but that too in context of the transparent windows. वो transparent windows की size के बारे में बात कर रहा था, transparent windows की glaring के बारे में बात कर रहा था. And Mahi, well done for marking the correct answer. Good job. हम तो यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं clearly कि this has been the place where this is mentioned, as you can clearly see. So this is the architectural design that I'm talking about, which made Oscar Wilde complain. Size of the window was not really the architectural design shift. ठीक है? I hope you have understood. नहीं समझ में आया तो please पूछो again. Moving forward, I'll also take you to question number 12. यहाँ पे बोला गया है, again I have highlighted it as green because the answer will be found in the same part. So in the context of the passage, how did the emergence of transparent glass windows in the late 18th century Europe impact societal norms and practices regarding home privacy? ठीक है, तो कैसे changes आए when it came to societal norms, society में जो norms, rules follow होते हैं उसमें कैसे changes आए, and the practices which were generally practiced by the common people. Okay, if I talk about option 1, transparent glass windows led to a greater emphasis on privacy. तुम ही लोग बताओ, if I have transparent glass windows, does it ensure privacy or the other way around? अगर मेरे घर में ट्रांसपेरेंट ग्लास विंडोज हैं तो क्या मेरे घर में ज्यादा प्राइवेसी होगी? और सेकेंडली एक और चीज मैं बता दूं, homeowners using curtains extensively. कहीं भी passage में have they mentioned that the homeowners were using curtains extensively? They said that curtains were a natural solution. But कहीं भी उन्होंने बोला कि majority of the population was using curtains. Secondly, I also told you that whatever the rich follows, everybody follows. The same thing has been talked about here. तो हम देख सकते हैं कि फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल ट्रांसपेरेंट ग्लास विंडोज हैं अगर आपके घर में तो इसका मतलब है आपको थोड़ी कम प्राइवेसी मिलेगी. इट डज नॉट मीन दैट ग्रेटर एम्फेसिस विल बी ऑन प्राइवेसी, इट मीन्स यू विल हैव लेसर प्राइवेसी. ठीक है, मूविंग फॉरवर्ड टू द आंसर, ट्रांसपेरेंट ग्लास विंडोज इनिशियली रेज्ड प्राइवेसी कंसर्न्स बट इवेंचुअली लेड टू मोर ओपन एंड एक्सपोज्ड होम्स. तो हमने क्या देखा फ्रॉम द पैसेज दैट स्टार्टिंग में लोगों के पास थोड़े रिजर्वेशंस थे. People were a little worried about prying neighbors. People were worried about the direct sunlight. But eventually, because people who used curtains were started to be known as the embodiment of poverty, तो लोगों ने तुरंत समझ लिया कि अगर मैंने अपने घर में curtains रखे तो I am going to be labeled as poor, right? And it became a trend. तो वही बात होती है कि eventually everybody started using more open, transparent glass windows, and their homes started to be more exposed to the outer world. If I talk about option C, the emergence of transparent glass windows had no significant impact. तो वो तो उसको बोला गया है आपको क्लियरली कि ट्रांसपेरेंट विंडोज के बाद से बहुत सारी चीजें बदल गई. तो यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है इट हैड नो सिग्निफिकेंट इम्पैक्ट, विच इज डेफिनेटली समथिंग विच कैन इजीली बी रूल्ड आउट. ठीक है, क्योंकि क्लियरली वी कैन सी देयर हैज बीन अ सिग्निफिकेंट इम्पैक्ट. आज भी लोग ट्रांसपेरेंट विंडोज यूज कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, and transparent glass windows were only adopted by the wealthy elite. Preserving their privacy only is an extreme word. मैंने क्या बोला था? Be careful about extreme words. Was it the wealthier population only that was using it? Passage में clearly बोला गया है, जहाँ पे वो survey किया गया था, the study, उसमें क्लियरली बोला गया था कि 29,000 से $20,000 के बीच में भी जो कमा रहा है, उसमें भी 10% लोग they like to keep their windows open or they like to use transparent glass windows. So the passage clearly mentions that 10% of people in the income bracket of $20,000 also like to keep their windows uncovered. So it wasn't only the wealthy people. It was also probably people who belong to the middle class because they started picking up on the trend, right? So option D cannot be the answer again. Okay, sorry. Moving to the eighth question now. Okay, did I do something with the eighth question? I guess so. Wait, so I'll just read it out for you. The passage suggests a correlation between income level and the likelihood of leaving windows uncovered. The passage में clearly बोला गया है कि how income decides your status, right? Secondly, how opened windows decides your status. तो यहाँ पे वही बोला गया है कि what evidence does the author provide? Evidence की अगर मैं बात करूँ तो we have a clear cut evidence which is this one, the study which was conducted, and that was this one. So I have kind of highlighted it in yellow because eighth one as well as 11th one again are same and will be found from the same area. तो हम देख सकते हैं कि हमें स्टडी में क्या पता चला था. सो दिस इज अ क्लियर कट एविडेंस. वो एविडेंस पूछ रहा था आप लोगों से, राइट? तो यहाँ पे उसने बोला ही हुआ है कि people who earn more than $150,000 are almost twice as likely to leave windows uncovered as those making $20,000 to $29,000, right? So this brings me to question number 8 and also question number 11. The passage mentions again, यहाँ पे clearly आपका जो कीवर्ड था वो था यूएस डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ एनर्जी, जिसने वो सर्वे कंडक्ट करवाया था. अगेन the answer will be found from the same area. यहाँ पे बोला गया what key finding from the study is highlighted in the text. तो क्या पता चलता है, ये भी clearly दिया हुआ है. यही तो ढूंढा था हमने अभी. So this is answer 11th, and answer 8th can also be found from the same paragraph, right? Then coming to the 9th one. Yes, how does the passage describe the change in perception towards uncovered windows in high-end homes in America over time? तो हमने देखा कि कैसे लोगों के जो थॉट्स थे, जो पर्सपेक्टिव था, वो ओवर द कोर्स ऑफ इयर्स चेंज हुआ अबाउट दीज अनकवर्ड विंडोज. So let's see what happened. If I talk about option A and option D, I don't know how many of you paid attention on the extreme word always. High-end home owners have always embraced uncovered windows. क्या हमेशा से ही uncovered windows हुआ करती थी इन लोगों? क्या पूरे पैसेज को पढ़ने के बाद we can clearly say that this was not really an always thing. It came into existence later on. ठीक है, तो हमेशा से तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं था. Uncovered windows have always been associated with high-end homes. ऐसा भी कुछ नहीं था. ये धीरे धीरे ट्रेंड बना था, राइट? इवन जो हाई एंड होम्स में रहा करते थे उनके अभी पहले स्टार्टिंग में ऐसे अनकवर्ड विंडोज नहीं होती थी. बट देन व्हेन इट स्टार्टेड पिकिंग अप पेस, फॉर एग्जांपल न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स ने इसको छापा. देन देयर वाज अनदर आई थिंक मैगजीन, द रूट, that also mentioned the same thing, and it started associating wealthy people with uncovered windows. Then only it became a trend. So it wasn't an always thing. First of all, तो दोनों भी eliminate हो जाएंगे. The answer is initially high-end homeowners considered uncovered windows a sign of poverty. And this answer can be found in the last para. So perception में कैसे change आया, यानी कि हमारी सोच में कैसे change आया. तो starting में हम उसको क्या समझा जाता था? Earlier, people used to consider uncovered windows as a sign of poverty. But this perception has obviously evolved. आज अगर हम देखें तो आज people would want to have uncovered windows, and this answer can be found in the last paragraph. Okay, so moving forward to question number 10. Based on the passage, which of the following is true about the primary reasons wealthy homeowners might choose to leave their windows uncovered? What could be the primary reason that a wealthy homeowner would want to leave their windows uncovered? First of all, wealthy homeowners prioritize privacy and block outside views to maintain. But हमें clearly बताया गया था कि अगर windows uncovered है तो it actually creates a vent to see the outside world. तो यहाँ पे block बोला गया है, and secondly prioritize privacy. बट वेल्दी होमओनर्स जो है उनके लिए प्राइवेसी का इतना कंसर्न ही नहीं होता है, बिकॉज दे कैन ऑलवेज हैव लाइक ट्रीज टू प्रोटेक्ट देयर हाउसेस और थिंग्स टू प्रोटेक्ट देयर हाउसेस, राइट? So it is not really about privacy. If I talk about option B, which is definitely our answer, uncovered windows provide natural light and a connection to the outside world, which is given here in purple. So this is the one. Uncovered windows bring in natural light, boost well-being, offer a view of the world outside. तो सारी चीजों की बात हुई है यहाँ पे, right? And if I talk about C1, wealthy homeowners have no concerns about privacy. Just because they have less concern about privacy does not mean that they have no concern. So this is again another extreme option. Uncovered windows are preferred by wealthy homeowners due to their aesthetics. So this option was actually partially correct, क्योंकि यहाँ पे सिर्फ aesthetics की बात नहीं हो रही थी, यहाँ पे actually utility की भी बात हो रही थी. Because first of all, it provides natural light, right? It also gives you the view of the outer world. तो इसमें अगर aesthetics के साथ साथ इन दोनों points को add कर दिया जाता तो this could have been the answer. But only one element has been discussed. That's why it's a partially correct option, right? Now, moving on to probably the most complicated passage. Most people might not have understood what's going on here, but let me like simplify it for you. When I talk about knowledge society, okay? So knowledge society में एक ही simple सा फंडा है यहाँ पे. And I generally ask this question in my classes, that suppose you have all the information of the entire world, all the knowledge that is to know, right? सब कुछ है आपके पास, but you do not know how to implement that knowledge. You do not know how to incorporate that knowledge. Will you consider yourself as an intelligent person? बताओ. Knowledge तो है तुम लोगों के पास, information भी है, but you don't really know how to use that knowledge. Will you consider yourself as an intellectual person? It's that simple. Okay, so let's try to understand what's happening. अब यहाँ पे बात होती है कि नॉलेज सोसाइटी जो है, इट्स फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल अ ह्यूमन क्रिएटेड स्ट्रक्चर, ठीक है? इट्स अ स्ट्रक्चर्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एंड it actually constitutes of two things. First of all, contemporary developed knowledge. Contemporary का मतलब है जो present day knowledge है, इसमें वो incorporated है. And secondly, it also talks about representing new quality of life support systems. How many of you have understood what's the meaning of life support systems is? क्या मतलब था लाइफ सपोर्ट सिस्टम्स का? तो मैंने अभी तुम लोगों को बताया कि इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ नॉलेज इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ठीक है? तो मैंने आज सुबह एक एग्जांपल दिया था कि सपोज आई वर्क इन अ हॉस्पिटल, आई हैव ऑल द नॉलेज दैट इज रिक्वायर्ड टू गवर्न दैट हॉस्पिटल, I have, like, I would say, the experienced doctors and nurses. But the thing is, again, they have knowledge about everything, but they do not know how to perform surgery. They do not know how to diagnose a disease. Would you consider that system a dynamic one? या तुम्हारे हिसाब से ये सिस्टम काम करेगा या नहीं काम करेगा? Think about it. I'll just be back. I want to drink some water. So think about it. Let me know in the chat box. If you haven't understood, I can actually like ask it again. Yes. So my question is pretty simple. I'm talking about a hospital, a working hospital, जहाँ पे सबको knowledge है हर चीज के बारे में, ठीक है? But the thing is, उन लोगों को उस knowledge को implement करना नहीं आता है. So do you think that hospital is going to be a success in near future, or is it going to flop badly? बहुत ही सिंपल सा क्वेश्चन है. एक डॉक्टर है, उसको दुनिया जहाँ का थियोरेटिकल नॉलेज है बट प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज नहीं है. विल ही बी एबल टू क्योर द डिजीजेस ऑफ पीपल? सो आई थिंक द आंसर इज प्रीटी एविडेंट कि नहीं कर पाएगा वो. तो यहाँ पे वही बात होती है कि न्यू क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ सपोर्ट सिस्टम्स. लाइफ सपोर्ट सिस्टम्स का मतलब है वी आर सराउंडेड बाय रेजिमेंटेड स्ट्रक्चर्स. हमारे आसपास की अगर हम इंस्टीट्यूशंस देखें, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एवर सिंस यू आर बॉर्न, you are a part of an institution. That institution is your parents, right? वो आपको बहुत सारी चीजें सिखाते हैं. They condition you into the human being that you are. They give you values. They give you opportunities. Then you go to the school, which is another structure, जहाँ पे आपकी टीचर आपको बहुत सारी चीजें सिखाती है. You learn a lot of things from your friends also, right? तो वो भी एक आपका regimented structure है. But the thing is, हर जगह पे वो जो knowledge है, it is being implemented and it is being shared and distributed in a way which is useful for you. ठीक है? तो वो यही बताना चाह रहा है कि when we talk about knowledge society, we are talking about two things. First of all, the contemporary developed knowledge, मतलब आज तक जो knowledge develop हुआ है उसकी बात कर रहे हैं. And secondly, the new quality of life support systems. That means the structures that we are surrounded by, how it has also changed over the course of years. It implies that we need to fully understand distribution of knowledge. Again, distribution of knowledge is not everybody's cup of tea, because you might have seen people having knowledge of a great deal of things, but they do not know how to distribute it. Distribute का मतलब यही होता है कि how to deliver it. ठीक है? बहुत सारे लोग यहाँ पे होंगे जिनको बहुत कुछ चीजों के बारे में पता होगा. But when I ask you to teach on the same subject, would you be comfortable doing that? So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Not everybody is comfortable when it comes to distributing the knowledge. वही बात हो रही है यहाँ पे. So यहाँ पे access to information. Again, access to information is I would say, a topic which can be debated on, because बहुत simple सी बात है, not everybody has access to information. Right to education के बारे में हम बात करते हैं, but not everybody actually has that, right? तो वहां पे वही बात हो रही है, capability to transfer information into knowledge. So everybody has information, but वो information knowledge में तभी बदलेगी when we know how to implement that information. Information तो मिल जाती है हमें, factual information. But the thing is, if I don't evaluate, analyze that piece of information, then it will not become knowledge. तो ये थोड़ा सा complicated तो passage था. Not everybody might have understood it. तो if you still have doubts, please ask me. तो हम यहाँ पे वही देखना चाह रहे हैं कि the understanding of knowledge is the central challenge. Knowledge तो है मेरे पास, लेकिन knowledge का interpretation, knowledge का comprehension, वो सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है. बिकॉज बहुत सारे लोगों के पास इंफॉर्मेशन होती है, बट उनको नहीं पता होता है कि वो इंफॉर्मेशन को कैसे यूज करना है. Now, the thing is, from our present perception of the knowledge society, it is useful to emphasize the role of the knowledge society in the future development of human society, obviously. If I'm talking about, expanding this knowledge society, the first thing that I need to ensure is that my future generation also gets to be a part of it. So that's first of all one of my primary agenda. तो यहाँ पे बात होती है कि the life support systems are essential pillars. जितने भी life support systems है, for example, institutions like schools, hospitals, your workplace, ये सारी चीजें बहुत essential है, right, for a human being's growth, for the society's development. So in this respect, the knowledge society represents a new paradigm for future डेवलपमेंट. जहां पे भी मैं बात करूंगी फ्यूचर डेवलपमेंट की, तो हमेशा याद रखना सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट विल बी द फर्स्ट थिंग दैट विल बी टॉक्ड अबाउट. बिकॉज फ्यूचर जनरेशंस के लिए अगर हम कोई भी चीज प्रिजर्व करना चाहते हैं, एंड इफ वी वांट टू इंश्योर दैट दे आर नॉट I would say deprived of the resources, then that means that you need to ensure sustainability. तो यहाँ पे वही बात हो रही है, it is strongly correlated to sustainable development. If I want my future generation to not be deprived, I need to work in a sustainable pattern, right? So for this reason, the sustainability paradigm of the knowledge society is a potential frame for human society development. इसका मतलब ये है कि when I talk about sustainability, it does not work only in one aspect of a person's life. It is first of all बहुत सारी चीजों में आप देखते हो, जैसे कि social cohesion देख लो, economic competitiveness देख लो, stability, use of resources, economic development, safeguarding biodiversity and ecosystem. Basically, we need to work towards every single aspect which is mentioned here. Only then we'll be able to ensure sustainability for our future generation. Then moving forward, the knowledge society is based on the need for knowledge distribution, access. ये जो पहले भी बात हुई है पैसेज में, कि सबसे पहले तो हमें क्या देखना है, नीड फॉर नॉलेज, वेदर पीपल आर एक्चुअली हंग्री फॉर नॉलेज. सेकेंडली, नॉलेज तो मिल गया, फिर नॉलेज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है. डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का मतलब जैसे आपकी टीचर नॉलेज डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करती है आपको, शी इम्पार्ट सम इम्पॉर्टेंट पर्ल्स ऑफ विजडम एवरी सिंगल डे, तो वो नॉलेज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होता है. एक्सेस टू इंफॉर्मेशन, एवरीबडी शुड एक्चुअली हैव एन एक्सेस टू इंफॉर्मेशन. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि हर किसी को इंफॉर्मेशन मिले. एंड सेकेंडली, केपेबिलिटी टू ट्रांसफर इंफॉर्मेशन इनटू नॉलेज. वो जो पहले भी बात हुई थी कि अगर आपको यही नहीं पता है कि हाउ टू ट्रांसफॉर्म इंफॉर्मेशन इनटू नॉलेज, तो फिर उस नॉलेज का कोई मतलब नहीं है. तो वही बात हो रही है यहाँ पे भी. सो नॉलेज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन इज वन ऑफ द एसेंशियल रिक्वायरमेंट्स ऑफ द नॉलेज सोसाइटी. डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ नॉलेज सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज होती है व्हेन इट कम्स टू नॉलेज सोसाइटी. सबसे पहले तो वो किस चीज पे डिपेंडेंट होती है, वो होती है इक्विटी पे डिपेंडेंट. इक्विटी एंड साथ साथ नॉन डिस्क्रिमिनेशन. सपोज I have access of information, but the thing is then I start discriminating people on different parameters. For example, their race, caste, their skin color. So इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि although access of information तो थी, access to information तो थी, but the thing is because of discrimination they have been stripped of their opportunities, क्योंकि तुम लोगों ने उनके साथ discriminate कर लिया. तो सबसे important तो यही है कि इक्वालिटी होनी चाहिए व्हेन इट कम्स टू नॉलेज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड नॉन डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, क्योंकि सबको इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटीज मिलने का टोटल हक है, राइट? which will also ensure justice and solidarity, because if you are not fair when it comes to knowledge distribution, then that means you're kind of failing as a part of knowledge society. तो आपको बहुत जरूरी है कि you need to follow the path of justice and solidarity. We need to work as one team. We do not really have to work as separate teams where we are trying to go against each other. फिर उसके बाद वो यही बोलता है कि it implies understanding of knowledge is a central pillar of the knowledge society. तो इसी से हमें समझ में आता है कि सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट ये होता है कि नॉलेज को अंडरस्टैंड करना, क्योंकि अंडरस्टैंड नहीं करेंगे तब तक हम उसको विजडम की तरह यूज नहीं कर पाएंगे. ठीक है, तो ये हमारी फर्स्ट प्रायोरिटी है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोगों ने आई थिंक द सेकंड पार्ट माइट हैव मार्क्ड एज वन ऑफ द आंसर्स. फिर उसके बाद वो ये बोलता है कि नॉलेज जो होता है वो इन्फॉर्मेशन से काफी डिफरेंट होता है. नॉलेज इज मोर देन इन्फॉर्मेशन, एंड वो तो हमें देखने को मिलता ही है. इन्फॉर्मेशन का मतलब होता है फैक्ट्स एंड एविडेंसेस, जो कि आपको पता है, बट द थिंग इज आपको वो इन्फॉर्मेशन कैसे यूज करनी है, दैट नॉलेज टेल्स यू. तो यहाँ पे बात होती है इट रिक्वायर्स इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोसेसिंग. सो जब हमें कोई फैक्ट्स मिलते हैं तो हमारा दिमाग प्रोसेस करने लगता है उस इंफॉर्मेशन को. वी इवैल्यूएट, वी एनालाइज, वी देन हैव आवर ओन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू अबाउट इट. तो ये सारी चीजों को बोलते हैं प्रोसेसिंग द इंफॉर्मेशन विद द स्पेसिफिक एम ऑफ ऑब्टेनिंग द कंसेप्चुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग, क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं कि हम उसके कॉन्सेप्ट को समझे. लेट्स गो टू द रूट ऑफ द मैटर, लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड द एसेंस और द क्रक्स ऑफ द मैटर. तो वही बात हो रही है यहाँ पे of life support systems. Life support systems again are those organizations that you're surrounded by. Schools हो गए, hospitals हो गए, colleges हो गए, your workplace, सारी चीजें आ गई इसमें within a specific cultural system. अब यहाँ पे बात होती है the global validation. देखो, कोई खबर है जो आपको मिली है, but it is not something which is universally validated. That means globally लोगों ने उस चीज को अग्री नहीं किया है, तो कैन आई मेक अ बोल्ड क्लेम अबाउट दैट पीस ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन? सो टुडे ओनली आई गेव वन एग्जांपल दैट मुझे अगर पता है कि द सन राइजेस फ्रॉम द ईस्ट, ठीक है, सपोज दिस पीस ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन हैज नॉट बीन वैलिडेटेड ग्लोबली, लोग नहीं मानते किसी दूसरे कंट्री की कि नहीं भाई सन तो नहीं आता ईस्ट से, so will I be able to make a bold claim about it? What do you guys think? Sorry. तो बहुत ही important चीज है कि a piece of information, first of all, when it turns to knowledge, it gets global acceptance, global validation. वही बात हो रही है यहाँ पे. The global validation of information is immanent. Immanent means inherent. It's present inside. Okay? So it's already present inside the knowledge society. And also, secondly, यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है, so access to the global information pool is the main driving force. तो तुम लोगों ने देखा होगा कि यहाँ पे भी उन्होंने main driving force बोला है. And secondly, they have used the central pillar of the knowledge society here also. Which one should I pick when it comes to choosing the answer? So the answer would be this one, because first of all, it has been mentioned first. एंड सेकेंडली इन द ऑप्शन वहां पे वैलिडेशन की बात नहीं होती, वहां पे सिर्फ ग्लोबल एक्सेस की बात होती है. बट यहाँ पे दोनों ही चीजों की बात हुई है कि पहले ग्लोबल वैलिडेशन के कारण ही one will get the access to the global information pool. So this is the second priority. The first priority is obviously this one, and I'll show you which question I'm talking about. This one. So the passage suggests several components which are crucial to the development of knowledge society. Which of these is described as a fundamental requirement? तो उसने ये बोला कि बहुत सारे several components डिस्कस हुए हैं जो कि हमने देखा भी पैसेज में. तो इसमें से लेकिन ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट या फंडामेंटल कौन सा होगा? तो तुम्हें भी एक चीज समझ में आनी चाहिए आफ्टर रीडिंग द ओवरऑल पैसेज, दैट if the distribution of knowledge is like not done in an equitable manner, सपोज यू आर बीइंग डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी, तो वो नॉलेज जो है वो वैसे भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट नहीं हो पाएगा, राइट? सो दिस इज वन ऑफ द फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लम्स एज वेल एज द फंडामेंटल रिक्वायरमेंट दैट यू नीड टू बी नॉन डिस्क्रिमिनेटरी. सेकेंडली, यू नीड टू हैव इक्विटी व्हेन इट कम्स टू डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ नॉलेज. तो इसको बोला भी गया है कि इट इज द सेंट्रल पिलर. Whereas जितने भी लोगों ने पहला ऑप्शन चूज किया था, यहाँ पे देख लो, ensuring global access to the vast pool of information. I'm not saying that this option is wrong, but this option is actually the second priority here. Why? Because first of all, it's mentioned later on. Secondly, it does not talk about the validation, the global validation. इसकी बात नहीं है. अगर इसकी बात होती है यहाँ पे तो then definitely this would have been the answer, right? So moving forward, हम जब ये passage पढ़ते हैं, so the capacity of information transformation into knowledge is again represented by the ability of the cultural system. अब देखो, वही मैंने बोला, कल्चरल सिस्टम का मतलब ये है कि जो आसपास के आपके इंस्टीट्यूशन है, जो आपको चीजें सिखाते हैं इन लाइफ और इन जनरल, ठीक है, they should be able to convert this information into something useful, which is also known as knowledge. अगर इन cultural systems को ही ये काम करना नहीं आता है, then that means you have failed to be a part of knowledge society. Okay, so हम यहाँ पे बात करते हैं कि it strongly depends on the cultural as well as social systems. The notion, the idea that knowledge society is, it emerged towards the end of 90s. अब यहाँ पे बात होती है कि ये जो नॉलेज सोसाइटी, पहले बात तो कॉमन लोग जैसे यू एंड आई, we did not know about something like the knowledge society. Generally academicians, they talk about the knowledge society because obviously they belong to the elite class of intellects, right? हमें तो इन सब चीजों के बारे में नहीं पता है, बट इन लोगों ने क्लियरली बोला हुआ है in academic circles that information society is very different from knowledge society. Why? Because information का मतलब होता है सिर्फ facts, ठीक है, facts and evidences, बट इसका मतलब नॉलेज नहीं होता. नॉलेज वो तब होगा जब हमें उसको यूज करना आएगा, यूटिलाइज करना आएगा, ठीक है. एंड यूनेस्को इन पर्टिकुलर हैज अडॉप्टेड द टर्म नॉलेज सोसाइटी. यूनेस्को ने भी इस चीज को एक्सेप्ट कर लिया भैया, ठीक है. Secondly, there has been a great deal of reflection on the issue which strives to incorporate a more integral conception that is not only related to the economic dimension. बहुत सारे लोग ये सोचते थे कि नॉलेज सोसाइटी जो है It works only for economic dimension. देखो सिंपल सी बात है, a knowledgeable person will always earn more money. Yes or no? मेरे ख्याल से सभी को ही पता है. If you have obviously ample of knowledge and if you also know how to use that knowledge, it's very easy for you to mint money, right? तो लेकिन यहाँ पे क्लियरली बोला गया है कि उनका सिर्फ एक ही एम नहीं है. The economic dimension is not their only goal. पैसा कमाना is not the only goal. For example, यहाँ पे एक अब्दुल वाहिद खान है, who is general sub director of UNESCO. उन्होंने clearly बोला हुआ है कि information society is the building block. ठीक है, देखो information के बिना वो knowledge में convert नहीं हो पाएगा, तो ये तो definitely it's the building block for knowledge. जरूरी है हमारे पास information होना. Whereas I see the concept of information society according to Mr. Abdul Wahid Khan, उनके हिसाब से जो information society है ना, it's actually linked to the idea of technological innovation. जो दुनिया भर में जो technological innovation creativity होती रहती है, उनके हिसाब से जो information society है वो उससे linked है. But according to him, the concept of knowledge society actually includes a very broad dimension. और ब्रॉड डायमेंशन का मतलब है इसमें मल्टीपल चीजें आएंगी, इसमें सिर्फ पैसा नहीं आएगा, इसमें सिर्फ टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं आएगी, इसमें आएगी सोशल, कल्चरल, इकोनॉमिकल, पॉलिटिकल, मतलब हर तरीके से knowledge society is going to be very much a part of your everyday life. Institutional transformation and a more pluralistic. अभी तक हम देख रहे थे knowledge society को सिर्फ economic dimension की तरह, which was a very singular approach, right? But अब समझ में आता है कि नॉलेज सोसाइटी का मतलब ही होता है टू काइंड ऑफ आई वुड से कंबाइन एवरीथिंग टुगेदर एंड यूज इट टू वंस बेनिफिट. इट मीन्स अ मोर प्लूरलिस्टिक एंड डेवलपमेंटल पर्सपेक्टिव. तो लास्ट में वो यही बोलता है कि इन माय व्यू द कॉन्सेप्ट, अब यहाँ पे इन माय व्यू का मतलब ये तो राइटर्स का व्यू है, जो भी राइटर था उसका व्यू है, क्योंकि अभी तक अब्दुल वाहिद खान का व्यू चल रहा था. तो वो बोलता है the concept of knowledge societies is preferable. ये तो हमें समझ में आ ही गया. According to the writer, information society is very different from knowledge society. Knowledge society is obviously, I would say, more preferable. तो यहाँ पे समझ में वही आ रहा है. The knowledge in question is important not only for economic growth but also for empowering and developing all sectors of society. तो मैंने अभी वही बोला था. It's not just about earning money. It's about empowering different aspects of one's life. So coming to the next one. What is the primary purpose of emphasizing the role of knowledge society in future human society development? जब हमने बात की थी फ्यूचर की, तो मैंने तुम लोगों को क्या बोला था, जहां पे भी फ्यूचर डेवलपमेंट की बात होती है वहां पे सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट की बात होती है. हम फ्यूचर के लिए अगर कोई चीज प्रिजर्व कर रहे हैं, इसका मतलब ही ये है कि वी आर एक्चुअली पीपल हु लव सस्टेनेबिलिटी, राइट? तो यहाँ पे वही बात हो रही है. वॉज इट टू हाईलाइट द ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन इनटू नॉलेज? देखो फ्यूचर जनरेशन की बात हुई थी तो वो यहाँ पे नॉलेज को, मतलब इंफॉर्मेशन को नॉलेज में कन्वर्ट करने की बात नहीं कर रहे थे. Illustrate the importance of knowledge in driving social and cultural. First of all, social and cultural is a very limited point of view, क्योंकि मैंने लास्ट के पैराग्राफ में क्लियरली दिया हुआ है. इट्स नॉट जस्ट द सोशल, कल्चरल और इकोनॉमिक change. It's like tons of changes simultaneously happening. So the answer should be to underscore the significance of knowledge, क्योंकि फ्यूचर की बात कर रहे हैं तो obviously promoting sustainable development. Option C is the answer. To demonstrate the necessity of global information access, इसकी भी बात हुई थी and it's definitely a valid point. But again, when I talk about future, I do not talk about global information access. It was talked about, but later on in the passage. So यहाँ पे जब हम future की बात करते हैं तो only one thing comes to the mind, and that is this. Please read it carefully. The answer lies in the first paragraph. Okay. Now, moving to the next one. The passage suggests several components. ये हमने अभी discuss किया था. We have already discussed this. How does the passage characterize the relationship between knowledge society and sustainable development? इसका भी आंसर आपको कहाँ मिलेगा? इसका भी आंसर आपको वहीं कहीं मिलेगा, फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ के आसपास. Because if I talk about the first one, it's the foundation for sustainable development through economic stability. क्या हम सिर्फ पैसों की बात कर रहे थे? Did we only want to get economic stability? So obviously it's a very limited option. If I talk about the next one, sustainable development is dependent on the technological innovation. It hasn't been mentioned anywhere in the passage that sustainability is dependent on technological innovation. So this is irrelevant because it's not mentioned. Option C is the answer. It's intrinsically linked to sustainable development as a new paradigm, which is given here. First paragraph, यहाँ से लेके पूरा यहाँ तक पढ़ लो and you will get your answer. So it has been clearly mentioned that for this reason, the sustainability paradigm of the knowledge society is a potential frame for human society development. So it's very much linked to our overall growth. And the last one cannot be the answer because kahi bhi, first of all, it's a misleading option because the passage does not really mention that sustainable development acts as a guiding principle. No, we did not give more importance to sustainable development and less importance to knowledge society. We clearly know that. So this is definitely not the guiding principle, but definitely an integral part of knowledge society. Okay. And 17th one, in what way does the passage describe the transformation of information into knowledge within a cultural system? When I talk about the cultural system, तो एक बार बात होती है cultural system की, जो कि यहाँ पे बात होती है here. So this is basically same for question number 14 as well as 17. Knowledge is more than information, यहाँ पे clearly बोला गया है. And it requires information processing. If I don't process my information, it does not turn into knowledge within the specific aim of obtaining the conceptual understanding. I'm trying to understand the concept. I'm trying to gain clarity and familiarity with the concept of the life support systems within a specific cultural system. तो ये जो cultural system की बात होती है, ये यहीं पे ही होती है. As you can see. By the way, when I talk about option A, why it cannot be the answer again. Technological innovations की जो बात होती है वो बहुत ही limited aspect है. Application of scientific methods to information, again another limited aspect. क्योंकि when I talk about cultural systems, I need to have every dynamic in place. For example, social, cultural, economic, political, every single thing should actually be on the table for me. Through the global validation of information within diverse cultural systems. तो global validation की बात तो बाद में होती है. It's not really in context of cultural systems. वो पहले ही बात हो जाती है. So this has been talked about later on. So that's why it cannot be considered as a way to transform information into knowledge, right? And ये तो बहुत ही clear cut answer था because Abdul Wahid Khan was actually our keyword. And it has been given in the last paragraph, as you can clearly see. So as cited in the passage, how does the concept of knowledge societies differ fundamentally from that of the information society? तो writer clearly बोल देता है अब्दुल वाहिद खान का point of view, जो कि ये है कि most people think information society is the building block for knowledge societies, whereas I see the concept of information society is linked to the idea of technological innovation. Technological innovation से ही link किया जाता है information society को. But on the other hand, knowledge society जो है वो बहुत सारी चीजों से linked है. Social, cultural, economical, political, institutional, right? So this is exactly what we are looking for in question number 18. If I talk about the first one, it is a contradictory option. Knowledge societies emphasize economic growth. सिर्फ पैसों की बात करती है कि knowledge society? No, it contradicts it. Information societies are centered around technological innovation. That's exactly what we found in the last para. And knowledge societies are primarily about global information access, unlike information societies. So again, primarily तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि it's after or about global information access. There are many primary reasons. उसमें वो equity वाली भी और non-discriminatory practice भी एक primary reason है. So this is not really explicitly mentioned in the passage. Information societies prioritize scientific values, whereas knowledge societies value social transformation. तो यहाँ पे पैसेज में टेक्नोलॉजिकल इनोवेशन की बात की थी, ना कि साइंटिफिक वैल्यूज की. So this is obviously misleading. Can't be the answer. Moving on to the last passage for the day, another very easy passage. It talks about the houses and the architectural designs of the houses. बहुत ही सिंपल सा बैसिस था ये. और हम देख सकते हैं कि कैसे आजकल every house looks like a copy of European suburbs and European houses and European infrastructure, right? So हम देखते हैं आजकल हम लोगों ने एक बहुत ही standardized international approach जो है, we have kind of embraced it, and whenever it comes to building design, many Indian architects have abandoned the vernacular traditions. Vernacular means local traditions. Okay, what is locally used and locally popular. अब हम देखते हैं कि that had been developed over thousands of years. Obviously, जो vernacular traditions थे वो तो कई हजारों सालों पहले से आए थे. And also, it was meant to combat the weather extremes. अगर हम अपने ancestors के घर देखें, so they were built in such a way that they used to protect them from heat, rain, winters, all of those things, because the houses were built in such a fashion. ठीक है, तो हम यहाँ पे देख सकते हैं कि the earthen walls and shady verandas of the humid south and the thick insulating wall and intricate window shades of the hot, dry northeast. Now it has been swapped or exchanged for a boxy modern style. अब हर एक घर एक दूसरे से ही रिजेंबल करता है. अब उसमें कुछ इनोवेशन नहीं है. अब उसमें वेदर से बचने की कोई वो ही नहीं है. आप लोगों ने सोचा ही नहीं कि हम हाउ आर वी going to save ourselves from weather extremities. So today, buildings in downtown Bangalore, if you go to Bangalore downtown, you will see the buildings look like those in Ahmedabad. So वही मैं बोल रही हूँ, एक जैसी buildings दिखने लग गई. Or in the north, or Chennai in the east, or those in Cincinnati, Ohio, or Manchester, England. मतलब हर जगह की building सेम ही दिखने लग गई है. In most cities, people have blindly followed the Western model. लोग बिल्कुल blindly Western model को follow कर रहे हैं घर बनाने के लिए. Says Kuriakose, an architect now based in Chennai. वो ये बोलता है कि आजकल कोई attempt ही नहीं है. There was no attempt to look at the local climate. People don't even care about the local climate. People are only bothered about building the same houses. There was no attempt to look at the materials which are available. हम ये भी नहीं सोचते कि हमारी city में कौन सा material available है. Which one is going to be best for our house? No. We are just blindly copying everything. So in the climate change era, this uniformity is looking like a gaffe. Now by gaffe, we actually mean a blunder, an embarrassing mistake. ठीक है, तो ये आप ऐसे लगने लग गए कि ये बहुत ही बड़ी embarrassing, humiliating mistake बन चुकी है by kind of building the same kind of houses. That's what Kuriakose says. फिर वो यहाँ पे पता चलता है inside my mud house the temperature is 5 to 6 degree cooler. देखो, it's a mud house, so obviously it's going to protect you from heat because it's going to be relatively cold, right? Says S Samyukta, an architect at Earth Building. तो उन्होंने अपना घर ही किससे बनाया है? मड से. And she divides her time between Coimbatore and also the Trans-Himalayan region. वहाँ पे where vernacular building styles are still prevalent. तो इन दोनों ही एरियाज में अभी जो पुराने टाइप के जो घर हुआ करते थे, अभी भी ये उतने ही prevalent है, उतने ही popular है. In the south, cob का मतलब ये होता है when balls of mud are mixed with sand, straw और lime, उसी को बोलते हैं cob. So हम देखते हैं साउथ में कॉब को यूज किया जाता है and it is layered into the walls and that is predominantly used. The reason is pretty simple, क्योंकि वहां पे भी साउथ में भी गर्मी ज्यादा रहती है. So to protect themselves from heat. In the north, stone and wood are used or bamboo in some places. North में उनका अपना culture है. They use stone and wood. Okay, because obviously in the colder north में हमेशा ठंड ज्यादा पड़ती है. So we try to trap the heat. The walls are created in such a way that it will trap all the heat and it will keep your house warm. In the south, we try to keep the heat out क्योंकि साउथ में गर्मी ज्यादा पड़ती है. So that is how they actually make their houses. That's what explains Samyukta. फिर हम बताते हैं कि Baker said that the walls should breathe. Baker का मतलब होता है obviously वो जो masons होते हैं जो काम पे लगते हैं वो यही बोलते हैं कि जो house होता है it should be able to breathe as in it should be able to आप बोल सकते हैं exhale the hot air and inhale the outer cold air. तो वही बात हो रही है यहाँ पे. So I avoid plastering and painting. तो इसी की वजह से this person Samyukta, she does not really plaster her house and paints it. In summer, I don't need an air conditioner. उसने घर ही ऐसा बनाया है कि she does not really require air conditioner. In winter, it's warm inside because obviously the walls have been made such a way that the heat is also trapped in the winter season, और अगर summer season है तो आराम से ठंडा लगता है. A growing number of sustainability minded architects आजकल हमें देखने को मिलते हैं कि finally the sustainability architects are back in trend, and they have started reviving vernacular approaches. That means they have also started bringing back the vernacular, I would say, way of architecture. And in February, the Indian government also pledged to revise the urban planning guidelines. So even the government is on board with the architects on this कि हमें sustainable घर बनाने हैं. We don't really have to recklessly, blindly follow the Western culture in this regard. Now the thing is, progress is slow. देखो क्या होता है, obviously अचानक से हम पुराने घरों जैसे घर नहीं बना सकते. If we have to bring forth some of the older elements, हम एक साथ सारे elements नहीं ला सकते. We need to introduce it once in a while, ठीक है, here and there. So progress is definitely slow because people also are not on board with the same decision. पहली बात तो फिर उसके बाद हम देखने को मिलता है कि द डायरेक्टर ऑफ इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट फॉर ह्यूमन सेटलमेंट्स अरुमार रेवी, a research focused university, we need to essentially affect the entire fabric of our cities. तो हमें एक बहुत ही मेजर चेंज लाना पड़ेगा when it comes to the entire fabric of our city. That means how our houses are built overall, planning to land use to building to transportation systems. Every single factor should be taken into account when we are building our house. The land usage, the building, the transportation system, हर चीज को हमें ध्यान रखना पड़ेगा. And we are only at the start of the conversation. That means we have just started talking. So nothing major has happened so far. अभी बहुत progress, as you can very well see, it's very slow. So it wouldn't be feasible. तो देखो इनको भी पता है कि it's not really a practical plan to replace all the modern materials. ऐसा नहीं है कि पूरे के पूरे modern materials खराब होते हैं, वो ये नहीं बोल रहे हैं. वो ये बोल रहे हैं कि we need to start replacing it slow and steadily. ठीक है, धीरे धीरे हम एक एक element पुराने tradition से लेके आएंगे. So it wouldn't be feasible to replace all the modern materials used in India's buildings with vernacular counterparts. Many skyscrapers, देखो अगर हम बात करें the tallest of the buildings, the skyscrapers, they will inevitably need steel and concrete, क्योंकि उसको मैं मिट्टी से तो बना नहीं सकती, मड से तो नहीं बना सकती बड़े बड़े skyscrapers को. I'll eventually need steel as well as concrete, right? And some traditional features like sloping roofs. Now this is something which can definitely be incorporated. तो देखो उसने एक बहुत अच्छा सा suggestion दिया. You can definitely incorporate sloping roofs and detailed window shades, जो कि आपको प्रोटेक्ट करे फ्रॉम सनलाइट एंड हीट. अगर हम इनकी बात करें तो लेकिन ये प्रॉब्लम है इसमें कि दे आर टू एक्सपेंसिव फॉर मेनी पीपल टू कंसिडर व्हेन बिल्डिंग देयर होम्स. तो ये आइडियाज या सजेशंस तो बहुत अच्छे हैं, बट द थिंग इज नॉट एवरीबॉडीज पॉकेट कैन अफोर्ड इट. सो दिस इज अ प्रॉब्लम. तो फिर हम देखते हैं परहैप्स मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली, अब देखो सिटीज में तो सभी को ही पता है प्रॉब्लम क्या है. द कॉस्ट ऑफ लैंड is very expensive. It's not easy to buy property in cities. So that has made finding space extremely difficult. Verandas, balcony के लिए तो जगह ही नहीं बची. Courtyards जैसी चीज सिटी में होना बहुत बड़ी बात हो जाती है. So which allow ventilation for a cooler. तो ये ऐसी चीजों के लिए हमें क्या चाहिए, पैसा चाहिए. ऐसी चीजों के लिए हमारे पास लैंड होना चाहिए. So obviously Kuriakos's firm, for example, has found ways to build traditional sloped roofs. तो इन लोगों ने क्या किया, obviously because he is in favor of sustainability, so he has kind of, आप बोल सकते हैं, worked with his workers, and they kind of brought forward this idea of creating these sloped roofs. अब ये जो sloped roofs है, obviously from here we can easily allow water runoff during monsoon season. तुम लोगों ने देखा होगा ना rain water harvesting. That's exactly what they're talking about here through these sloped roofs. So in monsoon seasons, you can easily allow the water runoff and you can actually store it for later use and prevent heat absorption. ठीक है, बाद में यही पानी आपको काम में आएगा to prevent heat absorption while incorporating concrete in some elements to make them cheaper. ये भी हो सकता है कि कहीं कहीं आप concrete को ऐड कर लो, क्योंकि concrete जो है वो सस्ता वर्जन होता है, it's cheaper, right? So here in Ahmedabad, the Mahila Housing Trust, a women-led non-profit organization promoted by Seva, they have found a very unique home solution, home cooling solution, और वो ये है, and this is specially meant for low-income households, जिनके पास already ज़्यादा पैसा नहीं होता है, but फिर भी they can keep their houses cool during the summer season. Heat-resilient rooftops, ऐसे rooftops बनाओ जो easily heat को झेल ले. So heat resilient rooftops are known as mod roofs. And this is developed by Hasit Ganatra, who is the founder of sustainable roofing firm Rematerials. तो इन्होंने क्या किया है बेसिकली, इट्स फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल अ सिग्नेचर प्रोडक्ट बाय दिस गाय हसित, और इन्होंने ये किया है कि ये क्रिएटेड वाटरप्रूफ मॉड्यूलर रूफ्स, जैसे कि हमारे मॉड्यूलर किचन होते हैं, तो इन्होंने वाटरप्रूफ मॉड्यूलर रूफ्स बना दिए, which is made out of paper waste and coconut husk. Again, sustainability is the key word here, right? That reduces the temperature of homes when we use all of these materials to create a roof. तो हमारा जो temperature है घर का वो काफी कम हो जाता है, and it also provides a sustainable summer covering or even alternative to RCC roofs. अच्छा, सबसे अच्छी बात ये है कि इफ यू थिंक दैट यू डोंट वांट द रूफ्स, यू कैन इजीली डिसमेंटल इट. ठीक है, यू कैन इजीली ब्रेक इट डाउन एंड स्टॉप यूजिंग इट, एंड अगेन अगर तुम चाहो कि फिर से तुम्हें रीइंस्टॉल करना है तो इट्स सुपर इजी टू इवन रीइंस्टॉल सच रूफ्स. सो नाउ coming to the questions of the last passage, what's the central thesis of the extract given below? So as you can see, I've already mentioned the reasons. The first one cannot be the answer, first of all, because it's a contradictory option. देखो यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है, द टीडियस एपिंग ऑफ द वेस्टर्न आर्किटेक्चरल फील्ड. देखो यहाँ तक तो आंसर सही था. Many people have the habit of reading the options partially. Please don't be that person. Because पहला आपको अगर इतनी लाइन पढ़ोगे तो आपको तो आंसर सही लगेगा, बट व्हेन यू रीड द एंटायर ऑप्शन देन ओनली यू रियलाइज कि तो पूरा उल्टा ऑप्शन दिया हुआ है. So as you can see, has made buildings to be resilient and hard wearing. क्या वेस्टर्न कल्चर से जो हमने चीजें कॉपी की हैं उसकी वजह से क्या बिल्डिंग्स जो हैं वो ज्यादा टेम्परेचर रेजिलियंट हो गई हैं? मतलब कि इट प्रोटेक्ट्स अस फ्रॉम हीट एंड इट प्रोटेक्ट्स अस फ्रॉम विंटर. इज इट कि हमने ये बात वर्नाकुलर आर्किटेक्चर के बारे में की है? सो अकॉर्डिंग टू द पैसेज दिस हैज बीन टॉक्ड अबाउट इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ वर्नाक्यूलर या लोकल जो आर्किटेक्चर होता है जो कई सालों पहले से ही इंडिया में यूज होता है. तो यहाँ पे कॉन्ट्राडिक्ट्स. द आंसर इज दिस वन. There has been a mindless imitation. ये तो हमें पता ही है. The writer says we have been blindly imitating the Western architecture in India from past decades. Decreasing temperature resilience, which is changing in the recent. अब देखो यहाँ पे क्या प्रॉब्लम हो गई है कि हमने टेम्परेचर के अकॉर्डिंग घर बनाना ही छोड़ दिया है. वी हैव स्टॉप टेकिंग इनटू अकाउंट हाउ इट कैन एक्चुअली अफेक्ट अस व्हेन इट कम्स टू एक्सट्रीम वेदर कंडीशंस. तो वही बात हो रही है यहाँ पे, which is also highlighted in this particular line. Look at this. तो उसने क्या बोला, सारी बिल्डिंग सेम लगती है. People have blindly followed the Western model, right? No attempt to look at the local climate. तो टेम्परेचर के बारे में कोई सोच ही नहीं रहा है. ठीक है, no attempt to look at the materials, which materials should be used, right? So this looks like a big blunder or a big mistake. And if I see option C, Indian architectural landscape is riddled with Western designs and materials, वो तो है ही, which must be wholly abandoned. क्या राइटर ने ये बोला कि पूरी तरीके से जो वेस्टर्न फॉर्म ऑफ आर्किटेक्चर है उसको अबैंडन कर दो? In the last paragraph, the writer clearly mentions कि it's not really a feasible option to completely get rid of the Western way of architecture, क्योंकि otherwise जो इंडियन मटेरियल हो तो बहुत महंगा पड़ जाएगा, राइट? तो wholly abandon is a very extreme outlook. वो ये तो नहीं बोल रहा है कि आप खत्म ही कर दो वेस्टर्न आर्किटेक्चर को. इंडियन आर्किटेक्चर हैज बीन माइंडलेसली एपिंग, ये भी ठीक है, but the problem lies with the latter part of the sentence, must be reformed with innovation in form of solely mud based materials. क्या राइटर ने ये बोला है कि अब आने वाले समय में जितने भी घर बनेंगे वो solely it will be made out of mud? No, he says it should be a proper combination of west versus east. दोनों को मिला के कोई अच्छा solution निकालना है which is affordable to most of the people, right? So D cannot be the answer. And what's the meaning? अच्छा, यहाँ पे बोला गया है कि what does the word gas does not mean. पहली बात तो gas का मतलब मैंने क्या बोला था, a blunder. ठीक है, तो बोल रहा है कि नहीं, जो गैस का मीनिंग नहीं है वो आपको चूज करना है. तो ब्लंडर तो उसका मीनिंग है, इम्प्रोप्राइटी भी उसका मीनिंग है, क्योंकि इम्प्रोप्राइटी का भी मतलब यही होता है मिस डिमिनर और रॉन्गफुल एक्ट. indiscretion का मतलब is not really gaffe या gaffe से related नहीं है. When you are, I would say, indiscretion is again something which is not clearly related to gaffe, but indiscretion भी कहीं ना कहीं इन दोनों वर्ड से रिलेटेड है, तो हम इसको भी यूज नहीं कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि when we are being, I would say, indiscreet, then also we try to hide things. So the only thing which cannot mean the word gaffe is a correction. बाकी तीनों जो है वो उसके synonyms हैं. Only correction is the antonym, and we were supposed to find the antonym, right? Now all of these can be inferred from the passage, except इनमें से क्या है जो हमें नहीं मिला passage में. If I talk about option A, which can be easily seen in second paragraph, architectural designs can have profound effect on the resilience of the house in extreme weather events. अगर हम बात करें संयुक्ता की, तो उसने अपने घर के बारे में यही बताया कि कैसे उसने मड हाउस बनाया, तो दिस इज एन आर्किटेक्चरल डिजाइन, राइट. उसकी वजह से उसका घर जो है वो 5 to 6 डिग्री कूलर है. Also, it also protects her from extreme, I would say, cold conditions, because that's how the house has been built. तो ये वाली जो चीज है ये सेकंड पैराग्राफ में मिल जाती है. लोकल वर्नाक्युलर बेस्ड डिजाइन्स एंड मटेरियल्स हैव बिकम कॉस्टलियर, ये हमें मिलता है लास्ट पैराग्राफ या थर्ड पैराग्राफ में. लुक एट दिस वन. Are too expensive. Sloping roofs, traditional features like sloping roofs, detailed windows, they have become too expensive. ये आपको लास्ट पैराग्राफ में मिल जाता है. And even the last one can be found in the last paragraph. There can be utilization of some local and sustainable materials for low income households. तो उन्होंने यही बोला है लास्ट में कि हमें कुछ लोकल, कुछ वेस्टर्न मटेरियल को कंबाइन करना है, so that we can create some sustainable options. Like you can see it here. They talked about they have found ways to build traditional sloped roofs. ये तो एक चीज हो गई. दूसरी बात ये भी बात हुई है यहाँ पे कि they have incorporated concrete in the same. So concrete जो है वो तो western material है, तो tradition and western both of them are meeting here. So ये भी हमें last paragraph में मिल जाता है. The only thing that we cannot get is this. There was little effect of temperature or weather conditions in vernacular architectural adaptations, whereas in the second paragraph we clearly saw कि जो vernacular हमारा architecture था उसमें temperature maintain करना बहुत easy हो जाता था. So the temperature control was totally in our favor, right? तो यहाँ पे opposite is shown in the passage. That's the reason we cannot really find option B. ठीक है? 22nd one, what's the solution offered by the author for low income households in extremely high temperature cities? क्या बताता है राइटर, क्या solution दिया? तो ये last paragraph में मिलेगा. I have highlighted it in yellow. Please see it here. They have found a unique home cooling solution. What is that? Roofs, and that too sloped roofs, right? So they have started making heat resilient rooftops called mod roofs. इन्हीं की बात हो रही है यहाँ पे, which is given here. They can get a ready-made roof installed. It's very easy to install it. It's very easy to dismantle it. From an enterprise run primarily by women, वो जो सेवा जो लिखा हुआ था उन लोगों ने, उन्हीं लोगों ने ये solution निकाला है. Okay. 23rd one, what could be a suitable title? सबसे पहले तो देख लो. Which one is the answer? The answer is the first one, vernacular architecture, which is a key to India's climate resilience. The entire passage talks about that, how the vernacular architecture actually prevents us from extreme heat and extreme cold conditions. So option A तो चलो बहुत अच्छा option है, but why it cannot be option B? Because the passage primarily did not talk about Western architecture. First of all, sole reason for India's woes on climate, क्या इंडिया के जितने भी दुख हैं उसका कारण, जो मेन कारण है, वो वेस्टर्न आर्किटेक्चर है? इज इट द सोल रीजन फॉर इंडियाज वॉर्स? अच्छा चलो, अगर होगा भी ये सोल रीजन, तो क्या द एंटायर पैसेज टॉक्स अबाउट दिस ओनली? इट वाज टॉक्ड अबाउट इन ओनली वन पैराग्राफ, नॉट द होल पैसेज. तो ये टाइटल नहीं हो सकता है. Indian architecture compared with Western architecture. We never compared Indian architecture with Western architecture in the passage. We simply talked about Western architecture and what happens there, and how we can actually bring forth vernacular architecture so that we can improve our own living conditions. So no comparison was made. The last one, Indian architecture glimpses from the glorious past. क्या हमने सिर्फ पास्ट की बातें की थी कि पहले के ज़माने में ये हुआ करता था and how it gave us such a glorious past? देखो, this means there is no present relevance of it, but we can clearly see that the vernacular architecture has been again brought into fashion by many architects. तो आज का relevance तो है उसमें. So this does not mean that obviously we are only simply talking about the past. And the last one. Last one talks about the amalgamation. Amalgamation का मतलब होता है when we combine many things. Okay? So here we are combining, first of all, what the modern architects are bringing forth, and secondly, in Indian housing or building landscape as mentioned. The amalgamation का मतलब है the vernacular, यानी कि the traditional along with the western. ठीक है, उन दोनों को combine करना है. So let's talk about option A, why it cannot be the answer. First of all the options were pretty close because they were trying to mislead you into picking the wrong answer. But let's try to understand कि कैसे काम कर रहा है यहाँ पे. Including an Indian traditional feature in Western based architecture design landscape. सबसे पहले तो एक चीज याद रखो. अब ये जो वेस्टर्न बेस्ड आर्किटेक्चर लिखा हुआ है ना, वो अब कन्वर्ट हो चुका है इंडियन बेस्ड आर्किटेक्चर में. तो सबसे पहले तो इट शुड बी इंडियन बेस्ड आर्किटेक्चर एंड नॉट वेस्टर्न बेस्ड. ठीक है, उसने बोला है कि इंडियन बेस्ड आर्किटेक्चर में आप कुछ वेस्टर्न फीचर्स ला सकते हो. इफ आई टॉक अबाउट B1 विच इज ऑल्सो आवर आंसर, मेकिंग यूज ऑफ मॉडर्न और वेस्टर्न मटेरियल, जो कि वही इसका ऑपोजिट ही दिया हुआ है, विच इज डेफिनेटली द आंसर. कुछ हम वेस्टर्न एलिमेंट्स ला सकते हैं लाइक कॉन्क्रीट with vernacular design. The design is Indian, right? So B is the answer. Using local materials. In the passage, we did not talk about local materials. We talked about materials such as uniform western like concrete, not local. तो local material की तो बात ही नहीं हुई थी, right? And the last one is including several features of Indian architecture. तो उन्होंने क्लियरली बोला है कि हम बहुत सारे फीचर्स इंडियन आर्किटेक्चर के यूज करेंगे, तो इट्स गोना बी सुपर एक्सपेंसिव फॉर पीपल. दैट इज गोइंग टू बी ऑब्वियसली हैवी ऑन द पॉकेट्स. सो वो ये बोलना चाहते हैं कि द पैसेज डज नॉट रियली मेंशन सेवरल फैक्टर्स बट वन और टू फैक्टर्स हियर एंड देयर. तो बोलता है एक छोटा सा चेंज अगर आप इंडियन तरीके से कर लोगे तो इट विल एक्चुअली हेल्प यू टू कंट्रोल द टेम्परेचर. बट वो ये नहीं बोलता है कि सारे ही फीचर्स डाल दो. So that's why this cannot be the answer. And this brings me to the end of today's session. Now, if you have any doubts, any questions, please ask me in the chat box. Otherwise, we can call it a day and wrap up today's session. I'm sure that you guys must be tired also because तुम लोग काफी देर से बैठे होगे, I think. So yeah, that's it from my side. Waiting for your response. If you have any answers, questions, do let me know. Okay then, I think that's my cue to leave. Thank you so much everyone for your time and a very good night to all of you. Bye bye. Okay, Mahi, thanks. Bye bye. All the very best for your next mock, by the way. See you again.